let me introduce our speaker for the day. First of all, this is Catherine, as some of you may already know. Thank you for joining our third in a row mastermind event. And well, this series is something that we established for the knowledge share. This series is something that we established for all of you to be able to do some networking with each other and just pick up some, let's say, SMS marketing engagement hacks, but also some great experience and perspective that Justin Lee today is going to share with us. My co-host today is going to be Stephen. Stephen is our success manager, one of the seniors. A lot of you probably have seen him in onboarding sessions. Hey, Sam, good to see you joined. So guys, let me introduce Justin real quick. Justin has been a full-time real estate investor since 2003. So obviously 20 years of experience, and he founded his first company, real estate investing firm, ABI Investments LLC, with his wife, Dreama. And since then, they've gone on to personally conduct over 400 deals, both residential and commercial, totaling over $150 million in real estate transactions. I know, great numbers, but also the experience that Justin can share today is invaluable. So he has purchased, sold, flipped, wholesaled, optioned, renovated, and rented properties. So he has done it all in Washington and California, Arizona, Oklahoma, Missouri, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and DC, as well as in Canada and Panama. So Justin has also owned and operated a marketing company since 2007 and is a managing partner of a real estate holding partnership that he founded in 2013. Justin is also a skier, a snowboarder. This is close to my heart, a traveler, foodie, and a sports enthusiast who resides with his wife and business partner, Dreama, in La Jolla, California, with their two kids, Stella and Sebastian. Justin graduated from Penn State in 1995 with degrees in both economics and history. So I'll let him and Stephen take it away for the day. Let me just admit all the others that have been pending to join. Awesome. Justin, welcome. Did I miss a spot? Anything else that you would like to say about yourself to the crowd?
No, I think you did a great job, Catherine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks for being here. And I believe, Stephen, thank you for basically participating in 80% of putting this together. I'm just moderating here. So let's start with the questions, Justin, if you're ready. I say we start with warm leads first. So basically, once a lead is warm, or if they're not there yet, how do you warm up your leads before calling them? And could you just walk us through a process real quick?
Yeah, great question. So right now for our outbound marketing, our two primary channels are cold calling and texting. So cold calling is exactly that. It's about as cold as it gets. We've got people sitting on a dialer and calling for us. So there isn't a whole heck of a lot of warming up there. As far as texting goes, obviously the text is cold as well. And our main methodology or mindset at our company is as soon as we get any type of positive engagement from a text message, or even neutral for that matter, we want to move them from a text to the phone as quickly as humanly possible. So, we've sort of got a ready, fire, aim attitude here, where we just, I've always said real estate investing is a contact sport. The more contacts you make, the better you're going to do. So we don't get too hung up on warm leads. I mean, warm leads are amazing, but when you're cold calling or texting, you're hitting up people cold, and you just need to be prepared to move them along as quickly as humanly possible.
Steve, anything you would like to add? Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, definitely. That was very insightful and valuable. Also, one thing we noticed that definitely works for our users across all plans is what we like to call warm calling in launch control. Basically, we send a text to warm up the lead. We try to build up some trust about our company and whatnot. And we want to make sure that when they respond, right, as Justin also noted really well, we get them on a call immediately. because that's where the door opens for us, right? To negotiate, to discuss motivation or price or whatever they want to give. So that's basically all I would add, but definitely warm calling is the way to go, or combining texting and calling.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stephen. And well, Justin,
Sure.
what do you think is the best way to handle that? And I'm sure pretty much everyone in the room, no matter if they're an investor or a VA, have gotten a response through an SMS that just says no or not right now. Justin, what's your strategy to best handle a soft no from a prospect, and how do you turn it into a potential lead?
So a couple different things. So we're going to respond to everybody, even if it's a soft no. Some verbiage that we like to use, and I would tell you that it's not necessarily a magic phrase and that it's going to produce a ton of leads, but what it will do is, for the handful of people who are considering maybe in the back of their mind selling, they're trying to be more polite, or that it's like, they've gotten some random text message and they're looking at their phone like, well, who the heck is this? Well, we use this language, which you can test out. We'll say something like, hey, so sorry to bother you. Sounds like no matter how much we can pay for the property right now, the timing isn't right for you to sell it. So sort of dangling that carrot where, again, it's not going to work on everybody, but some people go, well, wait a sec, how much can you offer? And now you can start a dialogue, get them off of the text onto the phone. So we like saying something like that. Otherwise, unless they specifically say, add me to your DNC, don't ever text me again, where it's really obvious, and we'll get them on DNC as quickly as possible. Anybody else, we'll just add them to a follow-up or a drip campaign. But that's the language that we want to use, is to, get them to maybe ponder and say, well, maybe I do want to sell this thing. Right. So, if you guys want that again, it's, hey, sorry to have bothered you. Sounds like the timing isn't right for you, no matter how much we could pay for the property.
Sounds good. And that opens you the space to actually check their motivation, to see what would really get them going. So thank you for sharing, Justin. And this just proves that the conversation is not over till it's over, right? If someone is an obvious DNC, we definitely want to send them there and not risk any liability, right? But otherwise, there's just so many things where you can see what would get the timing to be right. What is their actual pain point, right? Stephen, I'll let you expand on this, but just got carried away for a second.
Oh, that's great. I mean, what we definitely should do when we receive a soft no from a prospect, it's try not to push them too hard, right? And risk to damage the relationship altogether, or to get DNC'd. So, and instead we should try to understand why, right? Why are maybe they sold, but also trying to get some kind of solution for them, trying to come up with a different offer. Or if everything else fails, right, what we can offer is to provide some information or value later down the line if they'd be interested. So in my opinion, they would be a great potential for a longer term or more patient drip automation when it comes to the SMS engagement part, at least. That's what comes to mind.
Definitely. And Steve, let's just give a few examples of what is considered long-term in terms of drip outreach.
Very well. Well, what I usually advise our users to start with would be to start with a soft approach, starting on day 30, and then maybe having let's say 12 touch points spread across the year. That is a pretty common long-term drip automation, where you leave enough space, but also don't let the lead entirely forget about you.
Definitely. And thank you. So Justin, how do you make sure that your Stephen here explained this classical long-term drip? And yes, there is this customizable functionality in Launch, basically to adjust the time between the touch points and to, let's say, dilute as much as possible and as much as needed when there is really a long-term outreach needed to be done, but not leaving the lead behind, basically extracting the maximum out of each and every conversation. Justin, how do you make sure you're basically addressing each prospect to its full potential. Could you give us an example of how you have extracted some additional information from a prospect and magic tricks?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm going to answer the question in necessarily the way that you guys have wanted, but when I look at how do I make sure I'm using every prospect to their full potential, we had a big initiative probably about four years ago, probably about a year before the pandemic, where our mindset at our company became monetize every lead. And so I don't know everybody's background on the call. I'm sure we've got a mix of different people. I'm not a licensed real estate agent. And basically what we now have done is we want to identify everybody who wants to sell a property. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to buy every single property, but there are a ton of people out there who are never going to sell to an investor. They're just never going to sell at your price, nor do they need to sell to an investor, but they're going to sell. So we have our team in the mindset of, and it took a while to get the partnership dialed in and the splits done properly. But now we are making sure that if they are going to sell that property, if they are not going to sell it to us, we want to make sure that they use one of our partner realtors to list that property. So what we're doing is not only are we buying and flipping houses in our own investing business and our wholesale business and our fix and flip business, but we now have a channel to, disperse leads to licensed realtors where we're getting a share of that commission. And that's been a big revenue source for, not a big, but it's been an important revenue source for us over the past 4 or 5 years since we've been doing it, because there's nothing more frustrating than texting a client, you found a client sell, you text someone, you find out they want to sell, you run the appointment, you go, you look, the house really isn't in need of disrepair. There's nothing wrong with the house. You can't make the numbers work until they sell it at a big discount. They don't need to sell it at a big discount. And so we want to channel as many of those possible opportunities to our partner agents, especially being, operating out of 2 higher price point markets where the line item for the commission check when they sell is big. We want to capture a piece of that revenue. So that's how I would answer that prospect, of using, them to their fullest thing. And the only way you can find that out is just by asking really great questions. And again, our mindset is to ask the great questions and to have these conversations. It's a lot easier over the phone. So it's getting them off of text and onto the phone as quickly as humanly possible.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Justin. Stephen.
Yeah, well, for this part, I believe Justin covered it all. I don't have a lot to add. I mean, it is important to use some of the additional systems we have or features we have within Launch regarding some CRM functionality, such as notes, reminders, the tagging system where you can categorize your leads in an additional way. What we often see our users do when they don't really know where to put that prospect, they kind of just leave it without a status or mark it as not interested. That's something we would definitely avoid by introducing an additional filtration system in form of tagging the prospects. It can be based on the level of interest or the urgency or even the stage in the sales funnel or any other relevant criteria you find. But yeah, definitely make sure to use all of the features and to come off as professional, right? Even if they sold their property, there's not a chance in hell they would sell it to you, or they just can't, right? That doesn't mean they can provide some relevant information to us. That's something I see when doing account inspections, that people are very open to sharing some information if you're friendly enough, if you're willing enough to build that report. Nothing else I would add here.
Thanks, Steve. And just to address the pain points a little bit more in depth, you never know if someone is a senior citizen, if they want to move out of state to be closer to their grandkids, if there's any other situation where basically their life conditions can really change tremendously within a span of a few months. So just keeping your presence there. As Justin said, the end goal is always get them on the phone and talk to them over the phone. We encourage a combination of multiple marketing channels, but extracting the information that you need so that you can basically define your approach from that point on, and define how would you actually best and fastest get your prospect on the phone is the reason why we utilize those follow-up automations. Bottom line, no one's going to sell you even a bike if they don't hear your voice, right? So it's very rare to close a deal over a text. Yes, I've heard maybe 3 testimonials within 2.5 years that I've been here where someone just closed a lead over a text. Other than that, we do need to speak to the prospect. The more informed we go into that conversation, probably the better result as well. Justin, would you disagree with this?
No, not necessarily. No.
Just checking. Well, guys, you're always going to receive a totally different perspective, but I think those are kind of overlapping, let's say, efforts or overlapping logic of something that Justin can share with you as an investor with 20 years of experience, and something that we see working in terms of SMS marketing specifically. Doesn't mean that any of that is going to work for you necessarily. You need to get to know your prospects, to get to know your market, to define your touch points according to the nature of the replies you most often get, right? So just customizing that approach according to your particular needs and market and prospects is going to be a game changer for sure. But yes, as Steven said, no message, no lead should have a no status. Everything is treated a lead in SMS marketing as soon as a reply lands in your inbox. That's where you start generating conversations from. The initial outreach, you can send as many initial messages as you want, but if you don't have the bandwidth to back those conversations that land in your inbox up with some timely responses, that's probably going to be wasting leads. So utilizing follow-up campaigns to address the non-responders from the initial outreach, then utilizing drip automations for those that are not immediately qualified for your CRM as hot and warm, checking prospects' motivation, asking those post-discovery questions. That is really our primary recommendation for maintaining those convos and just keeping your lead generation ongoing. So Justin, what are your thoughts on using Launch as a CRM? Do you use it this way? How do you take advantage of the notes, tags, reminders?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, we don't use Launch. So Launch for us is a front-end vehicle to generate leads. And the second we get a positive response or we have engagement with somebody, we love that push to CRM button that you click in the top corner of Launch. And our mindset is once we have somebody raise their hand and show themselves as a potential seller, we want to get them out of Launch and into our CRM. Why do we want to do that? A couple different reasons. Number one is once we get them into our CRM, everybody on our team can see that lead. And we can work it out of there. We've also got automated follow-up systems built out of our CRM that we find are easier to add and do different types of follow-up campaigns. And also when it comes to, setting reminders, classic example for us is obviously just like everybody on this call, I'm sure we're doing a lot of absentee owners. Hey, Fred Jones, do you want to sell the house? Oh, I'd love to sell it, but I just signed a new 12-month lease with a tenant. Great. When does that lease expire? Oh, it expires April next year. Perfect. So we're going to push that lead to our CRM, and then we're going to touch base with them about 3 or 4 months before the lease winds up and start reaching out. Hey, I spoke to you last year in April. You told me to reach back out. I know the lease is coming up soon. So for us, we're doing that all out of our CRM, and Launch is a phenomenal front-end tool for us, but we are not using it as a CRM because you guys are a texting platform. You're not a CRM, right? That's why you push the CRM button. So again, as soon as we get somebody to raise their hand, make a positive or even somewhat neutral, statement or conversation or anything, we want to get them into our CRM. It's got more robust follow-up and team sharing capabilities.
Absolutely. And before Steven jumps in, Justin, I've seen examples of what you just said and examples of vice versa. So basically people, either have a lot of leads generated, and then there's the part where I can lose visibility, right? So you might have generated 200 leads, but if you don't bring them to a closer, I will hardly have visibility of that. So the responsibility of launch control as a platform in terms of ROI and deal flow, I would say, cannot be exclusively on launch, right? So it needs to be your investor skill, it needs to be how you operate your CRM, and it needs to be how well you generate your leads. So basically, just to back up what you said, launch is not designed to be a CRM. What you can do is collect some leads, and this is what we call lean marketing, because we have sometimes a user is going to cancel the platform for a couple of months, or they're going to pause their account, and then they're going to come back and just vamp back up their SMS campaigns, which is normal, which is totally fine. It's not losing a client, right? It's just the normal investing cycles. However, if you have done direct mail, if you have done cold calling, there is going to be some leads in your CRM that you kind of have left behind from other marketing channels. You are able to use launch for re-engagement campaigns for those leads that might have come from other marketing channels where you just want to re-engage those conversations through a text because you haven't imported those leads earlier. You haven't tried generating them through a text. So what you can do is see if text is going to give you more traction for those leads that you already sent some kind of a touch point to through other types of marketing, which is an option. But as Justin said, the main thing is launch is not a CRM, it's a lead generation tool, 100%. Stephen.
Yeah, in the sense of like being useful as a CRM, it can actually help some of the users. Like a lot of our users are actually VAs and people who work solely on the platform. I do understand, of course, that the hot and the warmer leads, they need to be transitioned immediately towards some CRM or to get the attention they need or to get the call. But for the no status or not interested categories, we definitely want to make sure to leave some kind of note, like what happened with them, like what do we know about them, so that we don't appear as unprofessional when we actually follow up. So just a short addition to what you actually said, some of our users might actually find reminders really useful on a daily basis to keep their workflow organized within the app, even though it is a lead generation tool. Nothing wrong with that.
Thanks, Steve. And well, Justin, how do you follow up with non-responders after sending them an initial message? Do you have a set schedule? Do you have any set plans, or do you just
the software launch is set up so we can hit them with a follow-up message for 30 days, which is fine for us. I wouldn't say we're militant about getting in there on day 30 or day 31, but certainly within day 45 we're in there. We're sending them follow-up messages just to keep dripping on those people, and then for those who we do get a positive response, we'll add them into a drip campaign. So yeah, I think you'd be you're not using launch to its fullest capacity. You're just sending your first batch, and then you're never using a follow-up message. You're just burning through data and burning through leads at that point. So we're definitely adding everybody to.
Justin, also Stephen, there's a lot of guests on this call, so non-launch users, not only our dearest customers. So maybe we can just explain, because this is a very common question that our teams get in terms of what's the window of time between the initial and follow-up message that we actually enable as a platform. So that's a very commonly asked question.
Very well. So basically the follow-up system works solely for the non-responders, right? As we already mentioned. And we will be able to send another or the first follow-up 30 days after the initial message goes out. So what we can think about is that we will need to split our daily limit that we have with launch between initial messages and follow-up messages. How do we think about that, or how can we split that ratio? Well, we usually look at the response rates and the deliverability. and it's usually higher for the initial campaigns. So you can always go in favor of the initial messages and leave a certain number of non-responders. As Justin phrased it really well, you don't have to be overzealous about it, right? You don't have to follow up on day 30, but definitely make sure to follow up before 6 months, because if you never follow up for 6 months through the system, these non-responders, they will start disappearing. So if I left anything out, I'll correct myself, or I'll update that as well. But I seen Odie had a question too, so.
Yeah, actually, I was just gonna give Odie the platform to ask a question, Justin. Hope you don't mind. Hello.
No.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
With regard to the follow-up, so my question there is, how many follow-ups do you, or how many follow-up campaigns do you actually do? Because in my experience, prior to moving to launch control, we were on REI Reply. I'm sure some of you already know that or are familiar with that platform. But for about a year, what we noticed is about 70%, maybe a little over 70% of our leads come from follow-ups.
Yeah, I mean, what we always like to say is that the deals are in the follow-ups. Or 80% of all the deals that are made through the platform come either through the follow-up campaign, which I already mentioned are intended solely for the non-responders from your initial campaigns. But the drip automation can be set up in any way that you choose, and they target the opt-in leads, or the ones that already landed in your inbox. So with these, you can be more personal, or you can kind of experiment with the approach, right? That doesn't mean that the follow-up campaign that is targeting non-responders should have the same approach for as the initial campaigns, right? We want to make sure that the approach sounds like we already try to reach out to them, and cater our messaging in that way as well.
Okay, in that case, how many follow-ups do you recommend for each list, for example? Because right now I have it set up for 30, 60, and 90 days. I'm thinking of 120 days as well.
Oh, those are drip automations. For drips, a minimum of 3 to 4 touch points, I would say, is optimal, but not lower than that. Otherwise, it would be reducing the drips functionality. But exceeding that number and having at least, I don't know, 10 messages, even 10 plus messages, it really depends if those are warm leads that you need to re-engage with quickly and target them on day 1, then day 2, day 3, etc. Or you need to leave some space in between, basically not come across as a spammer, but still leave the visibility and keep your presence and have those personal touch points with your prospect. Odie, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, I do get the drips, but I was referring to the follow-up campaigns.
For follow-up campaigns, basically you have the same message template structure as with initial messages. It's all about that sequence of messages, and that you want that same conversation starting from initial, then follow up to a non-responder, then potentially a drip automation, all the way to the push to CRM button that Justin mentioned earlier. Basically, you want those messages to sound like a sequence of messages and have them all aligned. So I would say the first, second, third follow-up campaign, if I'm understanding your question now, Odie, that we're talking non-responders exclusively. As long as you're getting response rates, as long as your deliverability is even 75 plus for those campaigns in particular, that is considered okay. But as soon as I start getting response rates of 2 or 3%, I would probably leave it and just use my daily limits for, let's say, more productive outreach, such as initial.
I see. All right, thank you very much. That does answer my question.
Thank you. Good question. Jeff, I see you have been answering the chat questions too. So guys, not that I need to mention, but any questions you might have, we'll address it all. We'll have a final Q&A in the end, but also feel free to ask questions on the go. Justin and Stephen both will be answering them. So Justin, what's your approach to setting up long-term drips? How often do you send them? What type of content would you say you include?
Yeah, so on drips, we're using drips inside of launch, when we're getting, soft nose, people who just don't seem really interested. There occasionally I don't want to say the problem, but the challenge with putting content in the long-term drips is it's got to be topical. So for example, we've been using launch since before the pandemic. So during the pandemic, when we were early in the pandemic, it was really easy to push out some content that would take somebody to a page, let them read something about a third party, there's no real estate activity. You can't even show a house in San Diego without filling out all these forms, et cetera, et cetera. So now maybe I would have pushed out content about interest rates, but now we've been in this high interest rate environment for a good, 6-7 months now. It's not really new or topical. If you can have something that relates to your local marketplace, that's a link that's innocuous, that you can send out, I think that's good. But if I'm being brutally honest, we're not putting a lot of content in drips. We're just using drips as an automated tool to stay in front of somebody. And then again, once we get any type of positive response, trying to get them on the phone and pushing them to our CRM, where we're doing also more drips after we've had a conversation with them. So for us, for drips, it's more the soft nose that we're using it, and we're not putting in like a ton of third-party content. It's just more hoping that we catch that person at that right time, right? It's classic. They don't want to sell today, but they might in 6 months or a year or whenever it might be. And then our philosophy on drips as far as time frame is push it out as long as humanly possible. We have a mindset which is this is from the old marketing days, but it's sort of unsubscribe or die, right? Until they die. So we're going to keep messaging them. We're going to keep dripping on them until they ask for a DNC, or we get them on the phone, or we find out they sold the house through another channel.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much. And Justin, before we move on from this one, I don't think Stephen and I have to add anything to this. You really expanded well on the drips, and well, what Justin just said, guys, we can just back it up. So talking from a perspective of an investor, you definitely see it's working. So if you're a beginner investor in this room, definitely a chance to learn some how-to moments. Let's see, launch as a platform okay, Stephen, this is you. How to get the non-responders back to the follow-up campaign list even after the 6-month period that was mentioned earlier. There is no functionality currently to get those prospects back to the follow-up campaigns after the 6-month mark has expired. So we are revisiting that logic, but until then, basically, you would probably be able to text those same prospects only through a different account and through a new list import. That would be the answer. Also, we have another question. This one is more for Justin, I believe. Do we still need to put the lead into the drip if they say no again after a month of reaching out to them again? Justin, how would you answer this?
I'd say it's a case-by-case basis, really. Like, you've got to feel it out. Like, what exactly did they say? Did they type in NO, all caps with 20 exclamation marks? Now, I don't know if I'm going to add them to a drip campaign. If it's just the word no, sure, I'm going to add them to a drip campaign. If they're like, if they say something like, I have no plans to sell the house anytime soon, I'm adding them to a drip campaign. So I would always err on the side of the more you touch them, the better, unless they're explicitly saying, take me off your list, do not contact me again, all caps, stop. We're gonna add them to either a drip or a follow-up campaign.
So basically, the tone is very important to recognize the tone.
Tone is really hard to discuss, to interpret through text. And so that's why we try and get them, on the phone as quickly as possible. We generated a lead from launch just this week because I had it was a phone appointment because he was an out-of-state owner, but he went from a very harsh and negative to, and it's hard because I've been doing this for a long time, but it's really important when you're on the phone with the person to sort of try and remain even keel and keep the conversation going. And I think that, you know, listen, I make mistakes all the time. I'll catch somebody in a bad mood, and then, you know, you just can't get them to turn. And this guy, happened to get him turned, and you know, the conversation ending up really positively. I don't know if it's going to be a deal, but it wasn't a get off the phone in, you know, 30 seconds because he said no kind of a conversation. So for us, it's you know, it's something where, yeah, we want to keep using drips, but again, tone is hard to convey over text, and we want to get them on the phone as quickly as possible.
Understood. Thank you, Justin, and fingers crossed for that lead. I'm kind of sure it's going to be a deal.
I'll let you know.
Keep me posted. Let me know if I'm your lucky charm today.
Yeah.
Let's see. Justin, there's another question. It's kind of related to this one, but just your best practice guide for turning an SMS into a scheduled call or appointment. This is maybe the question that kind of touches the investor skill more than anything. So how do you actually convert that conversation into a phone call? How do you get them to talk to
So
you?
first thing that we're doing is, if we get any type of, whether it's a positive or neutral response, we're not replying by a text, we're calling them. Okay. Half the time they're not going to answer the phone. So if they don't answer the phone, we'll leave them a voicemail, and then we'll text them again out of launch, and the text will say, "Hey Fred, I just tried to call you from my personal line. Seems like I missed you. When's a good time for us to talk?" So we're trying to get people off the text and onto the phone as quickly as humanly possible. When people will say, you know, sometimes they won't pick up, because don't forget, with launch, you guys are cycling through the numbers, and we're playing that whole cat and mouse game, right, with the recipients of the text message. So, you know, sometimes people will ask and we'll say, oh, when we text, we're doing it from a piece of software, but now you've got my personal phone number, right? So give them that direct line, and then move that conversation there and try and get them on the phone. And then our philosophy is, because I probably should have said this in the beginning, I don't really do any texting. Like, I did some texting during the pandemic when nobody could do anything, but I have a team that's doing the texting for me, virtual assistant, who lives in the Philippines, and she does a great job. And our philosophy as the company is book the appointment, book the appointment, book the appointment. Because guess what? It's a heck of a lot easier to look at the notes and say, well, this guy's house is worth, you know, $400,000, but he's asking $800,000. I would rather be in a position of, you know, calling that seller, qualifying a bit, and then canceling the appointment, than trying to chase down and get that appointment. So our philosophy is, to long-winded answer your question, is as soon as we get any type of neutral or positive response, get them on the phone, book the appointment.
Sounds good. Stephen, anything you want to add to back this up? I see you've been answering some chat questions too. Everyone ready for Q&A, but we still got a couple of more items on the agenda to go there. So Steve.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it's important to make the process as easy and convenient as possible for the prospect themselves, right? We should provide them with some clear instructions, as Justin really nicely elaborated. And something that comes to mind that we mentioned earlier concerns the follow-up campaigns with the non-responders, right? As we said, it's all right to wait for 30 days. We don't want to be too pushy. We don't want to damage that relationship, but we can still be personal and try to get more engagement, maybe by exporting that prospect or those non-responders from launch, and maybe target them with a separate marketing channel, or maybe calling them from your private number and tell them, like, that was my office number, this is my private number. Immediately you get that personal touch. So that's something that came to mind, but I believe Justin was really, really great. So nothing more I would add.
As expected. Justin, there's a chat question. Thank you, Stephen. But this question also overlaps with something that we were planning to address today. So we got a question: any tips how to increase response rates? Template techniques. Template techniques are an entirely separate area for a conversation, I would say. But talking about the data and how important is having good data when it comes to response rates and deliverability rates, I would love, Justin, for us to touch on that too.
So data is tricky, and we go through these challenges as a company all the time. So the one thing I can tell you about having been in this business for as long as I have, one of the most important things that you need to have in this business to do well is consistency. So if you're not texting people, if you're like, oh, I'm going to text today, and then you don't look at launch for a week, you're killing yourself. You don't have somebody texting. You know, we text 6 days a week. We text every day but Sunday. But our automated follow-ups go out 7 days a week. You've got to be consistent with that. The other thing you got to be consistent with is your data, because if you get to the point of having no data in launch, and for me, I would plan it out where I would work backwards and say, okay, how many texts can I reasonably send in a day, right? How many batches, right? So, and then work backwards and say, okay, well, if I'm going to do it today, and I've got somebody texting 5 days a week, it's 1,500, you know, a week, 6,000 a month. I need to be procuring 6,000 new records a month just to keep up with the outbound texting that we want to do. So obviously data is important. You don't want to input, you know, a database of people who don't own homes. Like, I'm making a ridiculous example to prove a point. But data is tricky and it's challenging, but it's something that you have to, like I said, be consistent about, and to have a plan for. You know, we've implemented a policy now in our team where once we get below 2,000 new leads, we're already looking at making a new data buy if we don't already have that data as well. The other thing is, if you're on a tighter budget, I would separate it out for your data. So one of the lists that we pulled at the end of last year was, we pulled a list of everybody, and I'm not going to get the dates right off the top of my head, but basically, you know, the last before interest rates spiked was what, beginning of 2022. So we took a 2-year window, and we took everybody who had either purchased or refinanced in that 2-year window when interest rates were absurdly low. Why did we do that? Because for us, one of our big hot buttons for 2023 and beyond is to buy more houses subject to. So we wanted to target people that we know had low interest rates. So, you know, we got a list of VA loans, we got a list of FHA loans, and then we got a list of all of the other loans that were taken out during that point. Well, all of the other type of loans came up to 30,000, you know, leads. If you're paying, you know, a dime per record on a skip trace, that's still $3,000 just to get the numbers. It's expensive for a lot of businesses, right, who might not have a ton of operating capital. So what we did was we broke that list down into 3 10,000 person chunks, and we'll go through the 10,000, then we'll skip trace the next 10,000, then we'll upload them. So we've broken them down into chunks. So yeah, obviously data is important, but I would say rather than obsessing over getting the perfect list, there is no such thing as the perfect list. There are lists that are better than others, but having consistent data, I think, is more important than having the best data.
Absolutely. And I would really vouch for this, because I've seen so many accounts burn in a high volume with, let's say, less well-established follow-up, and the results are totally different. You can even get a higher lead breakdown when it comes to hot and warm leads on a light account than a pro account if you know what you're doing with it, right? So those conversations and that consistency that Justin is talking about, if you have a team of assigned VAs, or if you are the VA working the platform, this is your niche. This is where you want to excel. This is where you want to be there on a daily basis and be consistent with those leads. If you blast, and text blast, I guess is one of the terms that is our least favorite here in Launch, right? So if you blast, let's say 2,500 initial messages today, but if a lot of those messages end up without a response for within the first 3 to 5 minutes, ideally, but then again on day one, I go into the account inspection 3 days down the line, and I find some hot and warm leads that said yes, or give me a call. And maybe we were just too busy and the day was too hectic and we had some property seeings. So basically, just as much work as you have to do as an investor, texting, if you don't have time to do the texting on your own, definitely find someone to do that part for you, because you want to be there at the right time, and otherwise it would be throwing leads down the drain for sure, as Justin already mentioned. Besides that, which states do you market in? Okay, Justin, Lendra has a question. For all those with 90+ deliverability rates, which states do you market in usually? So 90+ is usually a launch standard, but Justin, which states do you market in currently, I guess would be the question for you.
So our primary market is San Diego, California. So San Diego County has got about, 3.5 million people in it. A secondary market that we're texting in is Seattle, Washington. And so, but California is our San Diego's our primary market.
Great, thank you. And talking about lead segmentation by type, by location, any other criteria, Justin, do you segment your lists before importing, and how do you perform your segmentation?
Well, yeah, we definitely segment our list, and really, I mean, we're not doing anything fancy. Basically, we're just uploading the list. So, we'll take, so the recent list that we just pulled was, obviously, there's all the usual suspects, but like, let me give you an example of the list we just pulled. And this list that we actually pulled, we didn't pull the list, we ran it, we got counts, because our philosophy is we're going to keep going through different lists and adding data as we go. We don't go out and get 100,000 names and then dump them all into Launch. We'd rather go strategically, add a chunk, text the leads, add more data. So one list that we just pulled was homeowners, owner occupants who live in 2-story homes who are over the age of 70. And the theory there is, okay, maybe people get sick and tired of walking up and down the stairs, and they're going to want to downsize or move into a single level house. So it's not magic, it's not a home run, but it's another list you can target. So to answer your question about segmentation, when we upload that list, we will mark it as be as descriptive as possible when we upload it, so that when the people who are texting, they can get some insight or ask some questions, to that person. Well, they're over 65. Hey, how long have you been living there? Right? Oh man, it sounds like a great property. And eventually it will come out, hopefully. Well, we can't live in a 2-story house. My wife's needs that. She doesn't want to go up and down the stairs every day. It's becoming a burden, So segmentation, yeah, smaller lists that you upload, and when you upload them into Launch, label them really well. Take an extra 30 seconds and label it so that anybody, even if they had nothing to do with real estate, would know exactly what that list was.
Thank you, Justin. And Stephen, would you add anything else to the list segmentation tips?
Basically not to the list segmentation part, but maybe just to make sure that your templates and the approach in your templates is corresponding with the prospect category that you are targeting at the moment, right? Don't use the same approach. That goes without saying. don't use the same approach for every prospect category, right? We won't talk to the same way to someone who is high equity and who is, let's say, bankrupt, right? Or whatever. So we want to make sure we tailor the approach along with the list segmentation.
Absolutely. And also just have your messages sound like the person they're going to hear when they pick up the phone. That can sometimes work wonders, because if you leave a different impression over text and then an entirely different tone is set during a conversation, that can also kind of take away from that trust bond. So thank you, Steve. And any way to get expired listings to automatically load into LC Daily? That's a question. You can address expired listings as well. It's just about adjusting the content, but automatically load in terms of automatically import. That part would need to be done manually. Let me know if I didn't really answer the question you were asking. And then again, don't want to hop on a call. Can you just text me? Sure. What questions do you have for me that I can answer? Okay, these are some examples.
So sorry, I went through and I was trying to answer Michael. He had three main questions. And so I think the way that I answered them, because I broke up, was it came in three different texts. So I don't want to go through each one by one, or.
Sure. Feel free if you want to answer it just without typing.
Yeah, so let me go to his original question here. Where is it? Okay, so LaMichael had he wanted some quick replies. Where did it go now? Hold on, I'm scrolling through the
Take your time.
through wow, why is this so?
Had a lot of answers in the meantime.
That's great. Thank you all for participating in the conversation this actively. And
sorry guys, I'm just looking for Michael's original post. Well, I guess I'll just go through my answers because I can see my answers here one by one. So LaMichael was looking for some quick replies. Why is this going?
Oh, here, Michael shared. What's your offer? I've had other offers from investors now.
Here it is. Okay. So what's your offer? Okay, so this is a really common one. It's a really annoying one. I would tell you that most people who are asking you what's your offer, they don't even have interest in selling the house. They're just going through some mental exercise of, I wonder what someone will pay for my house, right? So with what's your offer, a couple different ways you can go. We'll say something like, we need to get our very best offer. We need to ask you a few more questions about the property than what's just online, right? Because people always say, well, all the information's online, right? You guys hear that all the time. All the information's online. We need to get a little bit more information than what's just online. When you have 5 minutes to talk by phone. Well, actually, let me back up. If somebody texts what's your offer, I'm picking up the phone and calling. Right? So that's step one. I'm not responding to a text message. If they don't pick up or they're insistent on that, then I'll say, if you want to get our very best offer, we need to learn more about the property. Or if you want to get our very best offer, we need to see the property and its interior to get the condition, right? So then people will push back. I just want an offer. We don't normally make blind offers because blind offers, we have to assume that the house is in horrible condition and you're not going to get our very best offer. It's not in your best interest to get a blind offer from us. If you're serious about selling the property, you want our very best offer, right? We'll do that. You know, as a side note, I did some consulting work for a buddy of mine who I've known in the business for a long time. Gosh, probably about 15 years now. And he's moved into the self-storage. I don't do anything in self-storage, but talking to a seller is talking to a seller, whether they own a single family home or a self-storage thing. And I find that a lot of people get hung up on, do you want to cash it? Right? I told my buddy, and I feel strongly about this, I tell everybody on the call this, you are not in the offer making business. You are in the house buying business. Part of buying the house is making the offer. If you're just running around giving people offers, you're sort of like, you know, a guy at a circus just doing whatever they're telling you to do. You are in the house buying business. You're not in the offer making business, right? An offer is merely a part in the process to buy that house. So that's how I'd handle, what's your offer. His other one is had from other interest offers from investors not interested in low offers. So the thing I would tell you here with number 2, LaMichael, is, are you educated in how to structure creative finance deals? Because if you are, then I would write back and I would say, totally understand. If you can help me out with some of the terms, I can get you a really great offer, probably at full price, right? I can give anybody in San Diego County a full price offer if they let me pick the structure, the terms of the deal, right? So there's an old saying, your price, my terms, or my terms, your price. You pick, which one do you want to control, Mr. Seller? Right? I got to have $1 million. No problem. This is how I can pay you $1 million for the property. Right? Well, I want all cash. You want all cash? I can't pay $1 million. I'm sorry. And then number 3, LaMichael, don't want to hop on a call. Can you just text me? And I'll just, at that point, again, to me, they're just sort of blowing you off. They're not a serious seller. I would just push back on them and say, sure, I can just text you. What would you like to know? When are you ready to make a decision? How much do you want for the property? Like, put it back on them and get, specifics from them. Can't you just send me an offer? Another great one I like to say to people who they don't want to let you see the house. Hey, Mr. Seller, I have a question for you. Yeah. Hey, when you bought this property, did you look at it before you bought it?
Totally.
We would like the same opportunity. We would just like to look at it. Well, I can't show it to you. Okay, that's fine. Don't forget, the second you give somebody an offer, they have absolutely no reason in the world to call you back. There's no reason for them to call you back. You've told them you'll pay $350 grand for the house. They don't need to talk to you again. You've lost all the leverage.
Justin, this was first-hand value. Thank you so much. I saw a couple of investor heads nodding away, so definitely everyone on the same page. Sam, would you like to add anything to this since we're about to wrap up the call? No? All good? Okay, thank you so much. Justin, there was another question that I personally wanted to ask, because this is very common as a dilemma that investors have a hard time solving sometimes. So if the property is already under contract, or if a lead asks for too much, how do you keep that door open for potential future deals?
Yeah, so if it's already under contract, hey, great, Mr. Seller, congratulations. How much are you under contract for? Hopefully they tell you. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. Hey, I'm sure it's going to be an awesome, smooth closing process. When are you supposed to close? I'm supposed to close April 30th. No problem. Are you okay? I'm sure it'll go well, but you can either have a real statistic or you can fib and make up a statistic. Hey, 2% of transactions in San Diego County don't close, unfortunately. Is it okay if I call you back on May 1st to make sure it closed? And hopefully I'm wishing you congratulations. So that's how I handle I'm under contract. Or you can also say, hey, listen, if you get any bad vibes about the current buyer, whether it's after the inspection or their financing or anything like that, feel free to reach out. So that's how I would handle under contract. And then what was the other scenario?
The other scenario was asking for too much. So under contract and basically out of your buy box.
Yeah, so they want, the house is worth 400 grand and they want 800 grand.
Yeah.
I would just say something like, wow, $800,000. I haven't seen any properties in the neighborhood sell for that much. How did you arrive at that number?
Good question. Yeah, and then the ball isn't back in their court, and the conversation is still ongoing. So, guys, Justin here gave you some nuggets of strategy that I would definitely implement if not already. Also gave you some fresh perspective, something that you maybe haven't tried before. Justin, thank you so much for this much value shared within just 1 hour. thank you all for listening to our conversation, for participating in our third in a row mastermind, monthly customer success mastermind in particular. And well, big thanks to our speaker for today, Justin Lee, and Stephen Pierce, our customer success manager. Also, if any of you need any VA training or just some best practices, SMS marketing tricks to share and equip your team with, success at Launch Control. These guys, I shared the sign up link for all our guests. If you want to check out Launch Control, feel free to sign up through that link. Justin is also our affiliate. So it was a pleasure really hosting this session, and thank you all for joining. See you next month.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure.
Oh, hey,
Bye.
Catherine,
Yes.
would you like me to put in a link for our CRM and our company who manages or for our VA?
Sure,
company?
just feel free, whatever you wanted to share that you have on your end. Okay, guys, you got the link too.
Yeah, and I'll put in one for my CRM as well.
Thank you all for great comments.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah,
like
sorry if we didn't get to all the questions. They will be addressed sometime.
During the next
Or you can
one.
reach out to us for a strategy session and we can go over it one-on-one as well. So that's something we offer
Yeah.
across all business plans or all subscription plans. Definitely, that's something that we as a success team love doing. It's one of our favorite parts of the job. So use us.
Okay. Yeah, I had fun, guys. Stephen and Catherine, thanks so much. And yeah, would love to do it again if you guys are interested.
Absolutely.
Love to.
Thank you so
Same
much.
to you.
Guys,
Thanks.
I'll stop the stream and end the event, but let's talk creative financing next month with Travis Oglesby. And Justin brought a lot to the table today, but definitely we'll be working with him for some future events too. Thank you all.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks.